Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and welcome to session on addressing persistent transmission of LF and repeated LF survey failures. Hopefully you are in the right place. If that's the session you signed up for, you are in the right place. My name is Jonathan King and I work with WHO in Geneva, and I am responsible for WHO efforts towards the global elimination of lymphatic filariasis. And I'm joined by colleagues from the Southeast Asia Regional Office and speakers from countries that will share their experience. So if we could just see the first slide. So this is the flag slide that many of you have seen. I've presented before. This is the latest update. And you can see that obviously 17 countries WHO has acknowledged as meeting the criteria for eliminating LF as a public health problem. And we have 11 countries that have stopped MDA nationally, 35 countries in a very crowded column here who have delivered MDA to all endemic areas, in some of these countries multiple rounds. 7 countries that haven't quite taken MDA to scale in all endemic areas, and only 2 countries now remaining. So we need to get behind these 2 countries. So the purpose of this slide is to really show you, next please, that every one of these countries that are in red have reported at least one task failure. And we know that even some of the other countries, there may have been pre-task failures, but we haven't received reports. So it's very common across all regions of WHO, and particularly among the Southeast Asia and Pacific countries. And that's going to be the focus for today. We've got 3 presenters that are going to share their country experience with failed tasks. And then we're going to have a chance to go into breakout rooms to discuss 3 main areas. 1, potential factors. Why are the surveys failing? And what might be the operational research around that to investigate any further analysis that we should do. 2, addressing poor compliance and also urban MDAs that may be one of the contributing factors. And then the 3rd group, looking at supplemental measures to how to respond. Like, what is the action that we can recommend to countries, and what are actions that we need to still evaluate, and what are the knowledge gaps? So thanks for joining. We're going to start off with a poll, then we're going to go to Dr. Aya Yajima, who's the regional focal point for NTDs in the Southeast Asia Regional Office of WHO. She'll give an overview of the issue at hand in the region, and then we'll hear from the country experiences. So first, I would like to hand over to Dr. Kamalakar Lashkare. He is our focal person for LF in the WHO office in India, and he's supporting the national LF elimination program in India and has firsthand experience, but I'm going to hand over to him to get us going. Thanks so much, Kamalakar.
Thanks, Dr. Jonathan, for this introduction. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. It is really a pleasure to be part of this meeting and interacting you together. So before we go to technical discussions, I request all of you to participate in a small poll in which you need to answer only 2 questions. What is your role, professional role in a country which you are working, and how many and which is your region, in which region you work currently? There are 6 WHO regions, you must all be knowing that. So here is the poll, and I request you, all of you, to participate answering these 2 questions. Thank you. I'll wait for the responses. Good. So most of the participants are either technical experts or researchers. And interestingly, yes, naturally, since we are talking about survey failures in SEER region, Southeast Asia, so it looks maximum participants are from Southeast Asia. That's good. So I hope all of you could participate in this survey, this poll, and I think these are the final result. This is the final result. 33 participants are technical experts. I think that is really good, and I am really looking forward for good discussion and valuable inputs. 27% are researchers. That is again good. In LF, we need definitely good research to make a good progress in LF. There is a lot of scope for research in LF. We are struggling with the tools for diagnostics in LF. So that is really good. There are 12%, 18% donor as well. That is good. 12% program managers. And as I already mentioned, 45% are from Southeast Asia, followed by 27% from African region, followed by 15% from Western Pacific, and 12% from region of Americas. So that is really good, and I'm really hoping for a good discussion in next 1.5 hours. So I think that is all related to the poll. I hand over the platform to Dr. Aya for further proceedings. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining this session. My name is Aya Shima, the Regional Advisor on NTD in WHO Southeast Asia Regional Office. In my presentation, I'd like to give a brief background of the challenge in repeated LF survey failure and the potential risk factors faced in recent years in the Asia Pacific, which is composed of two WHO regions, the Western Pacific region and Southeast Asian region. So there are 22 endemic countries in the West Pacific region and 9 endemic countries in the Southeast Asia region. Among these two regions, 13 countries have already achieved WHO validation of elimination of LF as a public health program, and 4 are under post-MDA surveillance nationwide, of which Lao PDR has already submitted dossier for WHO, and Bangladesh is also finalizing the dossier. And 12 countries already implementing MDA nationwide, and most of them are scaling up IDA. And Papua New Guinea is also scaling up IDA, and while New Caledonia, the last country to start MDA, is also soon to initiate an IDA this year. So these two regions indeed have the longest history of LF elimination efforts. WHO launched the global program to eliminate lymphatic filariasis in 2000, but actually preceding to that, WHO Western Pacific Regional Office has launched the Pacific Program to eliminate lymphatic filariasis, or so-called PACELF, in 1999. And in the same year, Samoa was the first country to start MDA nationwide under the PACELF. Then in 2006 countries followed, then 8 countries, then 5 countries, then 3 countries, and 1 country, and then 3 countries followed each year. And here are the countries that are still implementing MDA. So we are now in the year 2022. So obviously in all these countries, more than 10 rounds of MDA have been implemented in most of the IUs, if not all, and they continue to experience a failure in LF survey, either pre-TAS or TAS to date. To prevent TAS failure and improve TAS outcomes, WHO has published the guidance and also checklist, and RTI has also developed job aids following the WHO TAS checklist. Here, obviously, the most important things to ensure is that the implementation unit or IU has achieved effective coverage of at least 65% in consecutive years, which is independently evaluated, and there is no evidence of systematic non-compliance population group, and also that EU or evaluation unit has achieved epidemiological criteria in the pre-TAS before moving into TAS. suboptimal MTA coverage is definitely the most likely and obvious risk factors for persistent transmission. And in some countries, like in Samoa, for instance, the MDA has been implemented intermittently. So in such situation, even if effective MDA coverage has been achieved in each round, they are still failing LF survey. There might be never treated population within the implementation unit, even if effective MDA coverage has been achieved IU-wise. For instance, in case of Tuvalu, the whole nation is one implementation unit or evaluation unit, but most of positive cases in the failed tasks were in 2 outer islands, which can be reached only by more than 24 hours trip on the boat, very difficult to reach. And therefore, most likely actual MDA coverage was probably suboptimal in those outer islands, or MDA might have also not even reached there. We also know that achieving high coverage in urban area is always challenging. And potential cross-border transmission could also be a risk in some settings. For instance, in Nepal, all the districts that have recently failed tests at the border with India. And in fact, many positive children were found from the school on or close to the border. Also, many of them, the remaining countries where LF is transmitted by Aedes or Cubex mosquito that are increasingly prevalent and abundant and hard to control in urban setting. Some of the remaining countries in the Southeast Asia region are procuring MDA medicine domestically instead of receiving the quality assured WHO drug donation. This also raises a concern on drug quality. Quality of LF test and testing could also be a potential risk. There are experiences in Papua New Guinea where there were initially too many positive, but also too many invalid tests in the first week of tests. Then concerned on the quality of lab technicians, retraining of the technicians and also surveyors were conducted and task was reorganized. And after the training, the number of positive and invalid tests significantly reduced and eventually task passed. So this showed importance of appropriate training of the technicians as well as ensuring the quality of the LF test kits as well. So in conclusion, the risk factor for LF survey could be varied by country and also the setting, and therefore it is important to carry out a deep dive in each setting to understand the potential risk factors and address them to minimize the task failure. So following my presentation, we will hear experience of 3 countries, India, Nepal, and Malaysia, which are all experienced or have experienced the task failure and addressing potential risk factors. The first presentation is by Mr. Achyut Babu Oja, the program manager of the USAID Act to End NTD Nepal program. And the second presentation is by Dr. Kamalaka Arjun Lashkar, the National Program Professional Officer in WHO India responsible for lymphatic filariasis. Then the third presentation is by Dr. Khairia Binti Ibrahim, the National LF Program Manager in the Ministry of Malaysia.
I am Achyut Babu Oja, working as Program Manager for USAID Act to End NTD East Program, Nepal. Today, I am going to share Nepal experiences on effort in addressing persistent transmission of lymphatic filariasis. Nepal has made significant progress towards elimination of lymphatic filariasis. 48 out of 64 districts has stopped MDA, but stuck in a failure cycle. 15 districts are still ongoing MDA, which have failed one and other form of assessments. Among these districts, 14 districts failed pre-task at least one time. Government of Nepal has partnered with different stakeholders involving RTI and WHO. With USAID funding, RTI has partnered with local NGO to implement coverage evaluation surveys in 53 districts from 2014 to 2017. GON and RTI with USAID support analyzed never treated data collected from 67 sites of 12 districts during PTAS conducted from 2014 to 2021. Actist partner WIHER conducted JC assessments in 3 districts, Pake, Dang, and Kapilvastu, where 21 focus group discussions and 23 key informant interviews was conducted with 147 participants to explore root cause of non-treatment in MDA. Horde International and Dr. Kelvin Bardos, with support from the NTD Support Center, conducted rapid ethnographic study in 2 districts, Bardia and Parvat, with people who did not participate in MDA. WHO is continuously supporting technically from the beginning of the program. Technical assistance to roll out IDA in selected districts, that is repeatedly failure districts, is remarkable to strengthen MDA. In Nepal, it is widely believed that medicine should only be taken when ill and for curative purpose only. Still, the concept of mass treatment is to interrupt transmission at community level was not properly understood by most of the people. Severe adverse events in early years of MDA have had long-lasting effects on people's fear of side effects. In initial stage of LF-MDA, the program avoided distribution of drugs to people with selected health conditions to avoid rumors of LF-MDA side effects causing more serious health concerns. Which groups are not being treated? Findings from rapid ethnographic studies shows that most of daily wage seasonal workers, that is mostly men, are left behind for the treatment. 12.5% are traveling outside districts during the MDA, and among them, 36% are reported traveling outside districts for more than 1 month, and 76% were male. From the PTAS, which indicated that those who test positive and have never participated in MDA sites, severe illness during MDA as a reason for not taking drugs. Religious group or ethnic minorities, including Madhesis, Muslims, and Tharu community who had less decision-making power, are being missed for the treatment. In most recent surveys, that is PTAS, 7.3% of males and 5.2% of females were found never treated. This is wide variability by districts and sites. Therefore, need local solutions where possible or appropriate. Programmatic adoptions from 2019 onward to improve compliance. Extended days for MDA from 3 days to 2 weeks in an average. Drugs are made available throughout the year after MDA campaign in local health facilities. Switching to health workers from female community health volunteers to distribute or dose drugs. Redefining severe illness as only hospitalized and bedridden patients. Increased participation and mobilization of local religious and social and political leaders. Identifying community influencers to change behavior of reluctant community people. Mobilize school children as a change agent through school awareness activities. Perception and use of IC materials addressing side effects in local language where possible. Expanding journalist interaction and involvement up to district and sub-district levels. Piloting IDA from 5 districts. This slide shows year-wise LF-MDA coverage from 2003 to 2022 of Nepal, where we can see there is an increase in coverage with possibly increase in compliance from 2019 onwards after new and additional programmatic adaptation was done. New adaptations that can be considered from upcoming MDA. That is, fear of side effects needs to be addressed to mitigate side effect and take medicine when they won't disturb daily life. For example, that may be after a meal or before bed, or good drugs to be delivered door to door right before bed. Future challenges and or operational research opportunities. Which groups are not taking part in MDA are the most important. How we can cost effectively collect data to link infection and not being treated. Would test and treat be an effective intervention in areas groups with low risk perception and high rates of never treatment? Is MDA fatigue contributing to low risk perceptions? How do we convince people it is still important to take part in MDA? What tools or resources would health workers and community drug distributors find useful to respond to MDA refusals? Thank you. I am Achyut Babu Ojha, working at
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, as per your time zones. I am Dr. Kamlakar, and I am NPO for lymphatic filariasis at WHO Country Office for India. Today, I am going to discuss about the TAS failure status and what are the steps being taken in India regarding it to address it. So here we go. In my presentation, I am going to discuss LF overview and status of LF elimination in India. Summary of the TAS failure. We started transmission assessment surveys in India since 2013. And what is the summary of TAS failure so far? What are the major reasons identified for TAS failure and persistent transmission in India? And what are the steps or what are the measures being taken to address it? So this is the slide showing LF overview in India. There are 20 states and union territories which are LF endemic in India. Since 2004 till 2018, 256 districts were identified as a LF endemic. But due to some bifurcations and additional remapping surveys in other non-endemic districts, this number of endemic districts rose to 272 in 2022, and mainly due to bifurcation of the larger districts, erstwhile districts divided into 3 or 4 districts. This number now finally is at 328 LF endemic districts in 2021. Out of these 328 districts, 133 districts have already cleared TAS 1 and have stopped their mass drug administrations. 62 districts are proposed for pre-TAS and TAS 1. And 133 districts are still in mass drug administrations since they are having microfilaria rate of more than 1%. Out of these 133 districts which are under MDA, 75% of districts are from 5 major states, and these are Bihar, UP, Jharkhand, Odisha, and Chhattisgarh. If we talk about morbidity prevalence in India, 0.5 million, there are 0.5 million cases of lymphedema and 0.2 million cases of hydrocele, which have been identified with the actual surveys conducted in the field. Though it looks very grossly low, but this is the figure which is available with the national program. This is the graph showing number of districts conducted mass drug administration since 2004 and percent of districts having reported more than 65% of coverage. So if you look at the line which is shown in this slide, it shows pretty high coverage, more than 90-95%. But let me tell you, it is not actual coverage of compliance, or this is not actual compliance. This is the reported coverage for distribution of the tablets. So though the coverage is very high, we are failing in TAS continuously since last many years. This is the slide showing how the districts are moving towards the stopping MDA and how TAS clearance has been achieved in various districts since 2013. And you can see the progress was going on till 2018 or 2017. The progress looks quite well till 2017, but after that, since 2018, there is a stagnation of the number of districts cleared TAS 1 and stopped MDA in the range of 89, 95, 98, 98. The number which has increased to some extent in 2021, but it was mainly because of the bifurcation of the districts and now not with the success of the clearance of the transmission assessment surveys. Now let's look at the data of TAS failure status in India. Transmission assessment surveys started in 2013 in India and till 2022. These are the figures in how many districts these surveys failed. So till 2022, 65 districts failed in TAS 1, 9 districts failed in TAS 2, and 2 districts failed in even TAS 3. So the percentage of TAS failure is very high. And it's not that once we clear TAS 1, TAS 2 and TAS 3 will be cleared. It is not like that. We have failed in TAS 2 and TAS 3 as well. Now, if we try to identify the percentage of TAS failure, the data shows that the percentage for TAS 1 failure is 53%. Cumulative percentage for TAS 1 failure is 53%. Nearly half of the EUs, more than half of the EUs have failed so far. Percentage that for TAS 2 is 7%, and percentage for TAS 3 is nearly 3%. So this is how such a high TAS failure percentage is there in India. Now, if we look at further, if we look at the data of the TAS failure districts further and states further, you will notice that there are certain states which are contributing to the TAS failure in India to maximum. And these are Uttar Pradesh with 17 districts failed in TAS so far, followed by Chhattisgarh, 14 districts, followed by Bihar, 8 districts, followed by followed by Maharashtra, 9 districts, followed by Bihar, 8 districts, and then Jharkhand, 7 districts. Now, I am not the only person working for neglected tropical diseases in India. I am working at a country national level, and there is a whole team of WHO working for state and zonal levels. We have a presence till district level. So this whole WHO entity team, we tried to deep dive into the EU fail, TAS fail EUs, and try to identify as to why these EUs failed in transmission assessment survey with such a high number. So what we did, we took the data of TAS failure, or we took the data of TAS conducted in 2021, and 46 EUs conducted transmission assessment surveys in 2021, and out of those 46 EUs, 14 EUs out of 23 which conducted TAS 1 failed. 1 EU out of 6 which conducted TAS 2 failed, and 1 EU out of 17 EUs which conducted TAS 3 failed. So in total, 16 EUs failed in various TASes last year. And these TAS failed EUs also included EUs which had conducted 2 rounds of IDA. Now, when we analyzed the coverage of these IDA districts, we found that the compliance in this district was not so good. With our independent monitoring coverage of the WHO, we came to know that many blocks had monitored coverage of less than 65%. So that was clearly indicating poor compliance. So once the compliance is poor, what does it matter whether it's a triple drug or a double drug or any other regime? Also, one more point which could be contributing to the task failure in IDA district is ideally, IDA impact survey should have been conducted in these state districts, but since the guidelines were not available, so they conducted traditional transmission assessment survey by testing children in the age group of 6 to 7 years with the FTS. Another important point we noticed in deep dive was, though, as I have already mentioned, though the reported coverage is very high in these districts, but the actual monitor coverage was actually very poor, and many blogs were there which had coverage as low as 60-55%. If I have to talk specifically in Bihar, Arwal districts which conducted IDA never had coverage of more than 65% monitor coverage for both the rounds conducted there. We tried to plot the FTS positive children from these EUs and found that the spot maps shows the infection is scattered throughout the EU. It is not localized infection in one particular block or area. Also, another important finding we noticed was high number of invalid tests. So there is definitely some gap of a training, either training of the lab technicians who are using these tests, or the quality of the FTS, or the temperature, or the conditions, environmental conditions of this country. So in Jajpur, very high number of invalid tests were found: 170, 162, and 64 in task 1, 2, and 3, 75 and 300 in Nandurbar, 81 and 140 in Arwal, 90 and 80. So generally for a task, we test around 1700 to 1800 children. And in those many children, such a high percent of FTS is getting invalid, which is really a matter of concern. High infection load we found in Arwal district of Bihar. In spite of IDA, the number of FTS positive children was very high, and that was 158, which was 159 in 2016. So there was no change in number of children found positive with the FTS in Arwal. And another important finding we found was doubtful quality of the previous task surveys. We noticed that the EU Jajpur from Odisha, which failed in task 3, was passed in task 1, very borderline. When the critical cutoff was 20, the task was clear with 19 children FTS positive. Same was the case for Nandurbar from Maharashtra, which failed in task 2. Nandurbar passed task 1 with 17 FTS positive children when the critical cutoff was 18. So no one knows what was the quality of those FTS surveys, because at that time there was no WHO independent monitoring happening at that time. So these are the spot maps showing the scattered infection. The dots, stars, and squares shows the infection was throughout the EU. Same is the case for other districts. Now let's come to the summary for the reasons why this survey failed. So the main reason for survey failure in India is the compliance. Poor drug compliance. Simply there is no demand for the drugs, and whatever coverage is being reported, very high coverage, is mere distribution of the drugs. Though the conditions are improved and improving continuously in last 3 to 4 years with the intensified focus of national program partners coming in, but it is mainly, there is a lot of further scope for improvement in the drug compliance. And what are the reasons for poor drug compliance? It is mainly fear of the side effects, no adequate knowledge about the need and usefulness of these MDA drugs, and many a times MDA happens with very short notice, in a matter of 8 to 10 days, without any proper preparation of the micro plans, teams, proper planning. Other reasons for the poor compliance are we are struggling for quality rounds in urban areas. There are high-rise, there are different challenges in urban areas. On one hand, there are high-rise building not complying and not accepting the government medicine, and on other hand, there are slums, peri-urban slums not adequately aware about the usefulness of the drugs, and they are not simply accepting these drugs. Low priority by the health system, being a neglected disease, and there is no proper supervision, no involvement of the district and block officials in the MDA round, though the things are changing a bit. And missing beneficiaries at the workplaces. Many times when the team visit houses, most of the working population is at offices, factories and shops, and there is no special efforts taken to cover people in prisons, nomads, big cleans, construction sites, schools, military and paramilitary camp. It is happening to some extent in different states, but the scenario is not so good overall, and there is further scope for improvement. Inadequate capacity, I have already talked about this lab technicians capacity. There could be quality concerns with the FTS due to high temperature in India. Quality of the locally procured medicine. Though the albendazole and ivermectin is mainly provided by WHO through donations, DEC is locally procured. So there is some doubt about the quality of the DEC, and we try to get the quality testing done for DEC. We did it for some stock in Uttar Pradesh recently, but the report was good. The quality of the DEC was good for the tested lot. And reasons for task 2 and task 3 failure could be recruitments and doubtful quality of the FT previous implemented. Now, what are the steps being taken to improve the drug compliance? Intensify social mobilization is the only solution. Last week only, Health Minister of India reviewed the progress and plan for LF elimination in India, and he showed his highest level of commitment. He mentioned that he can involve Prime Minister or President of India for LF mass drug administrations, and is ready to support in any way to fast track the elimination in India. The challenge of having very short notice and conducting MDA rounds with inadequate preparation, to deal with that, we are national program is planning to have a pan-India campaign starting on the same day, so that adequate time can be provided for preparation of the round. Special strategy for urban areas. So WHO is supporting technically to ensure the rational workload, accountable manpower, and revisits in urban areas, and also revision in the micro plans to include the workplaces and special sites, so that no one is left behind. Quality training of the drug administrations with drug administrators with various AV aids, videos and other tools. Block level strategy to improve the quality of surveys and mass drug administration. We are going down to the block level, and this is very crucial strategy. We are very hopeful and looking forward for the success of this block strategy. Other steps being taken to accelerate the elimination of lymphatic filariasis in India are policy decision to include DEC fortified salt as an adjuvant to the mass drug administrations, scaling up the triple drug regime to the other task failed districts, remapping uncertain areas in block strategy so that they can be included in mass drug administrations as early as possible, and one-time survey to confirm these task 3 blocks that there is no any recruitments happened in those districts, and there is no need of mass drug administration in task 3 cleared blocks. Intensive independent monitoring by WHO. As already mentioned, there are 28 field officers, 8 data assistants, and nearly 3,000 external monitoring days per year to ensure the mass monitoring of the round MDH task surveys, night blood surveys, and we are supporting in all the ways we can to the national government. Capacity strengthening of the lab technicians, and for this we have already in collaboration with the regional director of Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, these trainings for lab technician have started in UP, and we are in the last 15 to 20 days, and we are planning to scale up these lab technicians training to other high endemic states like Jharkhand, Odisha, Chhattisgarh. Advocacy is being done for quality assured medicine, and already I mentioned that there was a quality testing done for UP drugs, and the quality found good for fortunately, and quality found for those drugs of good. So that is all from my side. Uh, that is all from my side. Thank you. Thank you very much for your patient listening.
Hi, good evening. I'm Hairia binti Ibrahim from Ministry of Health Malaysia. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share Malaysia experience on addressing persistent transmission of LF and repeated LF survey failure. This presentation will describe on the overview of LF program in Malaysia, our experience on task failures and the key strategies taken to accelerate elimination of LF, which includes the MDA using triple drug therapy. Then I will touch on post-MDA IDA surveillance outcome, and finally on the gaps and challenges we face by the program. This slide shows the timeline of LF program in Malaysia. We started LFEP in the year 2002, followed by 5 national rounds of MDA in 2004 until 2008, plus additional cycles of MDA from 2011 until 2016 in Sabah, Sarawak, and several IUs which failed Task 1 in Peninsular Malaysia. Task 1 and Task 2 was conducted in phases from 2012 until 2019. We had several Task 2 failure in 2016 and 2018, which I will describe later in my presentation. To accelerate LF elimination, beginning the year 2019, Malaysia has been introducing MDA using triple drugs, and finally in the year 2020, all 81 IUs in Peninsular Malaysia passed Task 3. This table shows the summary of red IUs in Malaysia. There were 5 remaining IUs located in Sabah and Sarawak due for Task 3 this year, and the final IU is due for Task 3 in the year 2025. This is the endemicity mapping of LF with 5 remaining IUs, colored in yellow, awaiting for Task 3. Looking at our history on task failure, we had Task 2 failure in the year 2016 in 3 IUs which are Lawas, Sunda and Bangkalala. Following this failure, we first introduced enhanced MDA in which emphasis given on the improvement on drug distribution using directly observed treatment by the health staff and weight-based dosing for every individual. Later, in 2017, we first used the mini-task approach in areas believed to have strong focal transmission. This activity was carried out in Ayu Tangkarasun, Sabah, which have never qualified for Task 1 due to failure of pre-task. It involved bigger sample size, testing of all 896 children aged 9 to 14 years old. Ayu Tangkarasun passed mini-task with 9 positive cases. In 2018, we experienced another Task 2 failure, which is Ayu Debak in Sarawak. Following that, triple drug therapy was first introduced in Malaysia, beginning with Ayu Debak and later expanded to other hotspot localities with prevalence of more than 2% identified from surveillance activity. Later, surveillance using Brugge rapid test was increased for rapid diagnosis of cases and early treatment. The 3 main strategies that we use to accelerate the elimination of LF in endemic areas includes active surveillance using Brugge rapid test kit, MDA-IDA in hotspot localities, treatment of cases using IDA, and follow-up of positive cases 6 monthly up to 3 years. This slide shows the snapshot of MDA using triple drug in Malaysia. It involves 29,800 targeted population in hotspot localities in Sabah, Sarawak, Pahang, Perak, and Terengganu states. This slide shows the examples of measures taken to achieve good quality and high coverage of MDA. And this slide also shows the examples of measures taken. While this slide shows the best practices that we use for MDA-IDA, for example, the door-to-door dot approach, house card tagging of each household, weight-based IDA dosing for everyone, use of pill crusher to avoid choking for children, and also antibody screening for all non-eligible persons. This graph shows the number of LF cases reported during surveillance using night blood slide, which is the microfilaria positive cases. And later in 2017, we used surveillance using Brugia rapid test, which is the antibody detection. I will share the surveillance on the outcome of the post-MDA using triple drugs. The surveillance was conducted 6 months after completed 2 cycles of IDA. Perak and Pahang shows 0 microfilaria rate using night blood slides. Same goes to Ayu Debak, which undergone pre-TAS and TAS1. However, the surveillance data in Sabah shows high percentage of Brugia positive cases with several positive microfilaria. This slide shows the third-year follow-up outcome of positive cases receiving IDA treatment for the cohort 2019 until 2022. There were no positive cases reported from Perak, but more positive Brugia and microfilaria found in Beluran and Pitas areas in Sabah. This year, we strengthened the ongoing surveillance activities and found more hotspot localities in 4 Ayus, which are Lawas, Sunda, Bangkalala, and Tangkarasut, which had history of TAS failure before. These 4 areas are due for TAS 3 this year. However, the National LF program decided to postpone TAS 3 and proceed with 2 additional cycles of triple drug with target of MDA coverage more than 90% eligible population. In summary, we conclude the key factors contributing to persistent transmission of LF in Malaysia are the possibility of role of zoonotic transmission in sustaining the cycle of transmission in human hosts, recrudescence of infection, which explained by the long duration of the last national MDA round, which was 14 years ago, and finally the surveillance component, which need to be strengthened despite long history of the LF program. In response to the challenges that we face, the national program has proposed for an operational research to demonstrate the zoonotic role in sustaining LF transmission in Sabah, to enhance surveillance activity using Brugia rapid test kit for early diagnosis and treatment of positive cases, and finally to continue MDA using triple drug in hotspot areas to bring down the prevalence in endemic areas. With that, I end my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, all the presenters. We were hoping to have some time for Q&A from the audience. It's excellent talks, and I've been following the chat and trying to follow some of the questions. I'm just going to pull up a few. For Kamlakar, when you map the positives, you mentioned they were scattered. Did you see a tendency toward the urban or rural areas?
Yeah, actually, I had replied to this, but the reply went to Dr. Saurabh Jain specifically. So I am just repeating it. Actually, since the areas in transmission assessment surveys are selected randomly, that may not always include an urban area. So what we did, we simply tried to plot those EFTS positive children, and it did include, or it did show some areas from a urban, some EFTS positive children from urban areas as well. But that is not a universal phenomena that we always get an urban area selected in transmission assessment surveys.
Sorry,
Jonathan,
excellent.
you're on mute.
Yes, I got it now. Thank you. So Korea, thank you so much. Excellent presentation that details the current status and all the efforts that you're doing. One of your last slides, you said limited surveillance. I don't know of any country in the global program that does more surveillance than what you're doing to the village by village level, especially in these areas that are still requiring NDA. From your slides, it seems that the monitoring that you've done, IDA is showing impact. So you're going from, you're reducing MF, however, you have these few sites where after a year, it seems to be something coming up again. there were some questions. I mean, is that a correct kind of interpretation of what you presented? I didn't, there was one slide where you said there were 2 areas where there were more Brugia Rapids. Oh, and even the Brugia Rapids were also going down as well, which is interesting to me. So can you comment or clarify whether I'm correct in that inference of your presentation?
Yeah, absolutely, Jonathan. Thank you. Yeah, your statement, you concluded very well, and you got my presentation right. That we found that actually it's my pleasure to when you mentioned that our surveillance is enough, but it's actually we try to improve it further by using the rapid test kit. And as for the areas with positive RTK, only we observe it only happen in Sabah area, not in Peninsula and even in Sarawak. So that what makes us think of what is the reason behind it, and what could sustain the transmission in this area as compared to the other area. Even the data is not as comprehensive as a research data. However, I think it gives us some clues on what is actually happened in this area.
Okay, thank you. And then remind me again, in that area, the subspecies of Brugia malea is the one where that are infecting animals. So you have not only domestic animals, but you also have wild animals as well. Is that correct?
Yes, correct. Yeah, it's Brugia malayi subperiodic, which is a zoonotic species. Yep.
Okay, great. I saw some comments in from Michael French. Are there any other interventions you think we should try? So Michael, I'm going to invite you to come into breakout group 3, where we're going to talk about any supplemental measures. But I think now we should take time to go into the breakout sessions. We've had these great presentations. We can see that each country has done a deep dive into their data. That seems to be very helpful. They've taken measures based on reviewing that data to try to strengthen their MDA, their repeat rounds of MDA. Is there anything else that we can do? That would be the topic of group 3 discussion, and group 1 will look at what more can we do, what further analysis can we do to look in to the factors that are causing the failures. Some were presented in the presentations, or some were proposed. And then in the second group, Kamalakar raised the issue of the difficulties with sustaining effective coverage, and also the difficulties with urban areas. So there'll be further discussion around that. So at this point, I think we're going to automatically assign you, you'll just be popped into a breakout room, and then the facilitator will be there, Aya, Kamalakar, myself. So if I can ask for help in getting us into breakout rooms, and we'll need to come back at around 10:30. So we'll have, 10:30 or 4:30 if you're on my time zone. So we'll have about 20 minutes. All right, see you in the rooms. So welcome back, everyone. And we were having lots of discussion, and our Easy Retro board was filling up. So I hope you were having the same in your group. So could we get just a short recap from group 1? Aya, or did you designate someone?
Didn't even hear me?
Now we can hear you.
Sorry.
Right.
Yeah. Sorry, my connection is a bit slow. But sorry, I did not even say thank you for the group. It just moved back to this room. So the wrap up. So our group was discussing the potential factor for LF survey failure and persistent transmission. And some of the programmatic data that we can use included, for example, if we try to understand data to add in a program, maybe at not nationwide, but in the select program area to see whether we have more individual data linked to the MTA progress and task progress. And also analyzing the population designated as ineligible for MTA. Often the ineligible population, a lot of the people are excluded and as a sick people, but then there is no definition of what do you mean by sick, and we never really look into this, the group. So that could be another thing that we can look into, and also specifically tracking and targeting the high-risk group in each implementation unit at the time of the micro planning. For example, like construction site, the specific, the occupational area, religious group in a high-risk area to see whether they have a specific, the factors for the task failure. And some of the research question could be dedicated mopping up activity where there is a history of poor DOT, the direct observed treatment. And also what indicator most predictive to determine task failure or task success. So that could be the operational research. And also risk benefit analysis of digitizing registering area failing the survey to be able to more quickly assess reason why not being treated or enable follow-up. Our group. And thanks everyone for their contribution.
Very good. Thank you, Aya. So good job, group one, very productive. Group two, Kamalakar.
Yeah, I would like to share my screen briefly for 1 minute. So even we got, it was very nice discussion in our group as well. And we got multiple good responses from the participants, very active participation. So the my topic was divided into what are the reasons for poor.
Kamalakar, can you reshare and then select your easy retro maybe?
Okay. Is it visible now?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, so even our group had a very good discussion and a lot of inputs. We received a lot of inputs from the group. So I would just like to summarize the points. My topic was divided into what are the main reasons for poor drug consumption or compliance in urban areas, then action points, what operational research we can conduct. So maximum people vote for a point that the main reason for poor compliance is not aware of MDA. It was followed by fear of side effects, and most of the population is out in urban areas. They are at workplaces. So these were the major reasons people felt that could be leading to poor compliance in urban areas. And the action points they suggested accordingly were revisits and covering workplaces was the highest voted action point, followed by community awareness through targeted groups like leaders, teachers, doctors, presidents of various associations. So this was the second suggestion given by them, and sensitization of allied class by medical associations like various organizations of surgeons, gynecologists. And in operational research, the highest voting point was to identify hotspots in urban areas rather than covering entire urban community. This we can channelize sources to focus MDA in certain areas. So if we could have this kind of operational research to identify hotspots in particular in slums, peri-urban areas, that would be really helpful to address the issue of urban. There were few other suggestions as well, combining mass drug administrations with vector control and vector surveillance. That was again an important suggestion received in operational research. Since there is a time constraint, I would not go in all other points mentioned here, but definitely it was very nice discussion, And same thing happened with me. I couldn't thank the participants for their involvement and inputs. Over to Dr. Jonathan. Thank you.
Thank you, Kamalakar. Excellent. And I can see that now that there's a little bit of overlap between our groups, which is good because that means that we're coming around with a consensus. So in our group 3, I also thank the participants. I think that I may have been sharing my Zoom and not the Easy Retro board, but hopefully if people had the Easy Retro, they were seeing that. I can also go to the Easy Retro here and share, but obviously in thinking about the supplemental measures or the response to persistent transmission and survey failure, it really comes around. We have the evidence. We know that the MDA works. It clears microfilariae when the drugs are consumed. So modeling and everything tells us that improving coverage will lead to the desired impact. But it's how do we then identify the groups and take the steps to improve the coverage. So it was felt, obviously this is kind of a district by district assessment, and that there was suggestions on going into the data like the presentations that we saw. Here, can we include examination of, in some countries are using the family registers, and if you look back along to that, you might find the never treated, the gender imbalance, and that for that specific block level or IU, you may be able to identify those who were treated or not and develop a strategy. Again, so support for the response being, first, we have to deep dive into the data. Part of that would be look into the spatial heterogeneity in coverage to see if there's some areas geographically that have been missed. And again, I think some of that could be mitigated by proper microplanning, making sure that no area is missed. There was several comments on the protocol that finding positive children in TASS are important. And is there a standard, or could there be a standard protocol for follow-up and action to take, not only just treating the positive child, but their households and whatever investigation might be required at the community level. It was noted that many positives, almost up to the critical cutoff, was troublesome to pass areas like that. And I think we have data from India that show that some of these areas that have passed TASS 1 with high number of child positives go on to fail TASS 2 or TASS 3 in some cases. Then from some of our modeling guests is to maybe question some of the thresholds that are currently set in the TASS. And with the IDA impact survey, it is going to be, it's actually a little bit more difficult to pass in that we're going to be focusing on the adults 20 years and older and looking at MF prevalence as a decision to stop IDA, MDA, or continue. So that would be getting down to what some of the modeling has projected, some of the transmission models have projected with the thresholds of 0.5%. So again, we've captured a lot, and I appreciate the group and their input on the board and also in person. So I think this has been very productive. It's given a lot of things of what we should try and evaluate and come back with evidence. I see there was one question: is there going to be standards guidance for post-validation surveillance in the new edition of the M&E? And yes, there is. So there will be. It won't be standard that every country has to do the same thing, but there are consensus points and recommended platforms, and for how long countries should do the surveillance. We're also going to have another meeting about post-validation surveillance coming up, a global meeting in Thailand in December. So some of you will be invited to participate in this. All right, so it's been very good session from my point of view, and I would really like to hand it over to Kamlakar. You've been really helpful. What were your closing, what was your takeaway from this session?
Yeah, so thanks, Dr. Jonathan. I think it was really nice to hear from colleagues all over the world what they think about these problems. And it seems they are not different from other countries. They equally face these kind of problems in their countries too. So it was really nice to hear their inputs, their suggestions. Even I had opportunity to interact with one of the senior colleague from India. So it was really nice discussion. I definitely gained some insight into this problem, and I'm very sure that this will definitely help program in India. So I thank each and every participant for their valuable inputs. I also thank Core NTD for providing such a nice platform to interact with and to brainstorm on priority issues, concerns related to the progress and research of lymphatic filariasis. And I would also like to thank Dr. Jonathan for facilitating this session very effectively, Dr. Aya for taking the initiative of having this session in Core NTD meeting, and continuously supporting me, motivating for different aspects of this session. And lastly, I would just like to mention that we are always open for any kind of collaborations, any kind of technical support required to colleagues from other organizations as well all over the world. So we are open. So if anyone would like to collaborate, they are most welcome to all of us. So with those words, I would like to stop here and thanking each and everyone for this wonderful session. Over to Dr. Jonathan. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Dr. Kamlakar, and thank you for your participation and leadership in this. And thanks to the Core NTD team. I don't have anything else to say. Aya, do you have any last remarks?
Thank you, everyone, for active participation.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.